Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. This is the post-game podcast. The Timberwolves defeated the Kings by 20 on Tuesday in another track meet, another up and down, no defense, all offensive affair. The Timberwolves scored 73 in the first half, but they gave up 67. It took them until the fourth quarter to really pull away from the Kings. But this was all about Karl-Anthony Towns. It was about Malik Beasley knocking down 7 threes. We're going to break down all the key takeaways, the ever-evolving rotation, what to take out of this game that was positive and what was not so positive. It's all upcoming on the post-game podcast. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. I'm also the editor of Dunking with Wolves, the Timberwolves site on the Fansided Network. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Check out PrizePicks.com and use promo code NBA, or go to your app store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Happy Hump Day. This is the postgame podcast. It's a victory Wednesday. The Timberwolves beat the Kings on Tuesday by 20. Today on the pod, we're going to talk all things key takeaways from this one. We're going to talk about Malik Beasley's big night, 7 threes off the bench. Karl-Anthony Towns, another 25-point game, near double-double again for him. A strong all-around offensive game, and also some continuing defensive struggles. A couple of differences with the rotation now that the team is finally largely healthy, or at least had all players available. So it's all upcoming on the show. Plenty to talk about. And, of course, the trade deadline is now less than 48 hours away when you're listening to this. So we're closing in on that as well. So we'll touch on that here at the end. A quick thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen each and every day. Of course, the show is free and available everywhere you listen to podcasts. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, Odyssey, wherever you like to listen. You can also follow on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves and at Beecken. That's with 2 B's, 2 E's, CKEN. All right. So setting this one up, the Kings obviously early in the day on Tuesday made a significant trade. They shipped out 3 players. So obviously, most significantly, no Tyrese Halliburton, nobody healed, and then also Tristan Thompson all got shipped out. So this was going to be a shorthanded Kings team that the Timberwolves were going to be facing in this game. Obviously, they're getting Domantas Sabonis. I would imagine he's not going to be available for the Wednesday night encore performance of Wolves Kings at Golden One Center in Sacramento. But this was a shorthanded Kings team. Obviously still De'Aaron Fox, Harrison Barnes has had a fantastic season, but not a team that the Wolves should have struggled with. And for the most part, they didn't. The Timberwolves had 5 guys on their injury report listed as questionable. All of them played, or all of them were suited up. Actually, yes, all of them ended up playing because of garbage time. Okogie was able to get on the floor at the end of the game. But everyone that was on the injury report for the Timberwolves played in this one. And so we're finally looking at a mostly healthy Timberwolves team, obviously a little bit dinged up here and there, but who isn't now that we're into mid-February, basically. So a very winnable game for Minnesota against the Kings team that had won 2 out of 3, but prior to that had lost 7 straight. They're just a couple games back of the 10 spot and of the play-in in the Western Conference. But a team that the Wolves are like, we're 9 or 10 games better than in the standings coming into this game. I guess 8.5 games, 9 games better coming into this one. So a very winnable game for Minnesota. And it started off with fireworks. I mean, the offense was fantastic. The Timberwolves scored 31 in the first quarter. The only problem is so did the Kings. This was a 35-35 game after the first quarter. Minnesota's offense, in fact, especially the second unit, was fantastic in the second quarter. Actually, rewinding briefly, Karl-Anthony Towns started out the game completely on fire. He had 10 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists all in the first quarter before he ever headed to the bench. And then the second quarter, the Timberwolves bench continued to dominate. They've been the league's second highest scoring bench going back to early January. They continued that in this game. They actually defended much better than the Timberwolves starting unit did. And this is in the really kind of the early portion, the late first, early second quarter. And Minnesota built a multiple possession lead. When the starters came back in the game, though, the defense really kind of faltered. And this ended up being a 73-67 score at halftime. The Kings shot 58.5% in the first half and attempted 15 free throws. They made 14 of them. So Minnesota was in a deep hole on the glass. They were fantastic shooting the ball, the Wolves were, and they had forced 10 Kings turnovers, much of them early in the game. And that was kind of, I tweeted early in the game that the Timberwolves were active on both ends of the floor. They weren't actually playing good defense, but they were active enough early. And a lot of that was gambling. We saw a little bit of Anthony Edwards gambling. We just across the board, the Timberwolves were kind of selling out to get these turnovers. It's one of the reasons why they continue to be the league leader in opponent turnover percentage and in causing turnovers from opponents. The Timberwolves forced 10 first half turnovers from the Kings, but they still gave up 67 points. I mean, if the Timberwolves hadn't forced 10 turnovers, then they probably are losing at halftime and they easily give up 70 in the first half. So the defense was not good. Don't let the steals fool you. Don't let the activity level simply fool you. I was simply pointing out early in the game on Twitter that, I mean, this easily could have been a mail in game for the Wolves, and we've seen them do this before. So I'm not saying it should have been or that they would have any excuse for it to be, but having won four in a row, playing a depleted team on the road that you would have been better than even before they were shorthanded, first game of a road trip. You know, you're playing two in Sacramento, consecutive games, 2 games in 24 hours. It would have been easy for them to sleepwalk through this one, but the Timberwolves were active on both ends of the floor really throughout the game. It's just the activity wasn't actually leading to solid defense, especially early in the game. So the Wolves ended up being up by 6 at halftime. And then the third quarter is when they really started to separate. Cat had 14 and 7 at halftime. The Timberwolves had shot 60% on 3-pointers in the first half, had 12 made threes at halftime, finished with 20 made threes for the game. The course of the third quarter allowed the Wolves to start to pull ahead, and then it was really kind of early mid fourth quarter when Minnesota held the Kings scoreless for about 3.5 minutes. Really kind of the midway point of the fourth quarter. The lead got up to over 20 points at that point in the game. Karl-Anthony Towns, Malik Beasley, that they were kind of the story of the game anyway. Also Jordan McLaughlin. We'll talk about him in a little bit. But Towns and Beasley were a big part of putting the Kings away early mid fourth quarter. It got over 20 points. We were able to get a couple minutes of garbage time, and thankfully, I mean, Karl-Anthony Towns led the Wolves in minutes with just 28 played, and Edwards played 26, Russell 24, Beverly 23. Jared Vanderbilt only had to play 21 minutes. So you had a bunch of guys playing kind of between 15 and 25 minutes, but nobody playing more than Towns 28. So really good considering the Wolves turn around and play again on Wednesday and then travel to Chicago all the way back to the Midwest to play in Chicago on Friday and then play again Sunday. So they don't get these consecutive off days again for a little while. So good to be able to save some legs. This was a fun game because it was a ton of score. I mean, the Wolves scored 134 points in a 48-minute basketball game, but they also gave up 114. So I want to talk more about that here in a little bit, plus a couple of other takeaways to talk about from this game. First, though, let's talk about our title sponsors of today's program, and that, of course, is PrizePicks. All right, NBA fans, are you looking for a daily fantasy option for the NBA? Then you need to try the award-winning app PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. I love this, and I know you will too. It's super easy to use. The way it works is you just pick anywhere from 2 to 5 players, pick an over-under on their projections. It's you versus the over-under. You can win up to 10 times on any entry. And again, you versus the projected numbers. You're not playing against expert daily fantasy players directly. You're playing against the numbers. Your entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It really is that easy. PrizePicks is safe and offers fast withdrawals. You can use the award-winning app on both the App Store or Google Play. So the way you play is really simple. You pick any prop you can think of. In basketball, it could be points scored, rebounds, steals, etc. You can even do mixed sport entries. So if you want to do something up against the NBA on Sunday, the Timberwolves play another Sunday matinee against the Pacers, I believe, on Sunday in Indiana. So you could choose Karl-Anthony Towns over on points, and then you could bet on the big game Sunday night, the big football game. You could go I don't know, Joe Burrow over touchdowns thrown, Karl-Anthony Towns over points scored. Ton of fun. It gives you something to root for all day long. And mixed sport entries. I mean, you win, you can hit on both of those and you can win, up to X, whatever X times, your play on that, on your entry. It's not just NBA either, as I mentioned, NFL, but also college basketball, college football. Once we get to that season again, MLB, soccer, MMA, and more. For a limited time, PrizePicks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all of our users. Users get $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point, but you must use the code NBA. That's right. This is an exclusive offer available to Locked On fans and listeners. Sign up today. Use code NBA, $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point. So get on that. Sunday is a perfect day to get started on PrizePicks if you have not already. All right, another thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen. Definitely appreciate that. The NBA trade deadline is tomorrow, Thursday, the 10th, 2 p.m. Central. That's 3 p.m. Eastern. The Locked On NBA podcast will be covering it live from 1 to 3 p.m. Central. So an hour leading into the deadline, an hour after, covering all the big moves. That's 2 to 4 Eastern time. Join Kim Becker, John Corrales, and Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd to get analysis of every blockbuster move. Subscribe to Locked On NBA YouTube and turn your notifications on so you know when they go live. All right, let's talk key takeaways from Wolves Kings. Part one, of course, will be treated to part two on Wednesday night. Let's talk about Karl-Anthony Towns and Malik Beasley again. What more can we say about this stretch that Karl-Anthony Towns is on? I kind of ran this down on the post-game pod after Sunday's win over the Pistons, so I don't know that we necessarily need to go through the game log again. But I mean, it's hard for me. You'd have to go back a while, maybe the Jimmy Butler year, maybe the year following that until the injuries came up for Towns, to find a stretch where he's played this well on both ends of the floor for this long of a period of time. I mean, you could really go back to right when he came back after the bout with COVID, which was what, late December into early January. I mean, go back to the beginning of January. He's averaging a double-double, and he hasn't done that for the season. His rebounds have been up going back to the beginning of January. Assist numbers are up. The shooting percentages across the board are up. Well, I should say overall they're up, and free throw attempts and percentages are up. The three-point percentage is down just slightly. But overall, he's been phenomenal going back to the first of the year. Just in this month alone, in the 4 games in February, he's averaging 23 and 12 with a little over 4 assists, shooting 56% from the field, 30% from three right now, but 89% from the line, 6 free throw attempts a game just over the last 4, which is just February. So 4 of the 5 wins in a row. This was just another really good Karl-Anthony Towns game. It wasn't, again, not eye-popping numbers, 25, 9, and 3. He got into a little bit of first half foul trouble, but overall very measured, uh, staying within himself offensively, truly taking what the defense gives him. And I don't mean that in like a game manager quarterback type of way in football. I mean, like Towns was legitimately, if he's doubled, he's passing out of it faster, which is something that everybody wanted to see him do earlier in the season. They're also giving him far more face-up opportunities. He's getting more drives to the basket because he's catching the ball on the perimeter. The defense is playing up on him because they don't want him to shoot threes at a 40% clip. And so he's taking opposing centers to the basket. It's one of the easy ways to guarantee he's not going to get double covered. He may face somebody trying to step in and take a charge on his way to the basket, but we saw him pass out of that a couple times. He avoided a passing crash early in the Kings game. I think it was the first quarter. And I don't remember if he actually got an assist or if it was essentially a hockey assist or not. But it was a pass and crash type situation where a wing defender or help defender stepped in to try and take the charge, and Towns passed out of it, did not charge into the defender. But it's a surefire way to get one-on-one coverage. And of course, if the defense plays off, Towns is going to step back and hit threes at a 40+% clip. So it's really hard to argue with giving him the ball on the perimeter, just telling him to go to work. I mean, he's a good enough passer as long as he plays within himself to make that to make that work for the Wolves. Of course, more elbow touches, touches at the nail, at the free throw line. That makes a lot of sense for him as well. Just mixing in the low post touches, maybe depending on the matchup, depending on how teams are covering him, a few of them a game to keep teams on their toes if they're not expecting it. Maybe he won't see those double teams early low block post ups too, early in the shot clock. If he can get down and post up and get low position, and kind of seal a defender early, and the Wolves can find him, that's another way to avoid a double team and still give him a post touch. So masterful performance once again from Karl-Anthony Towns. And then the other piece of this takeaway is, again, Malik Beasley lately. I mean, he had a handful of these games. The first time the Wolves played the Nuggets way back in, I think, October. He had a couple of games in November. There was a game or two when most of the team was out with COVID-19 back early January or really late December, I guess. But I mean, again, it was what, 5 or 6 games out of 45 that he had played well up until this recent stretch that Beasley had. And now he's scored in double figures in 5 of the last 6 games. And he scored 20 plus in 3 of the last 6 games. He's shooting well over 50% from the field in February, or excuse me, from 3-point range in February. And it's just been a phenomenal stretch for Malik Beasley. I want to dig a bit more into that later this week, assuming he's not traded on Thursday. By the way, I don't think he will be. And if you're wondering why, I listened to the show, Tuesday show, when I broke down the trade deadline stuff. I just don't think he gets traded. But at any rate, 21 points in just 19 minutes in this game, 7 of 11 shooting, a perfect, or not perfect, but 7 of 8 from outside the arc, almost perfect. And all 21 of his points came on three-pointers. He only had 2 rebounds and 1 steal, didn't do much else in the box score. But I mean, Malik Beasley, if he can knock down, he's not going to knock down 7 threes a game, but he's knocked down 4 or more threes in 5 of the last 6 games, 4 consecutive. And if that's the Malik Beasley we're getting, then there's no sense in trading him, and he fits this team perfectly. I mean, we're finally getting to the point where he's the hair trigger release with him, where he's catching and shooting. It feels like it's like Aaron Rodgers release. A lot of football references today. Aaron Rodgers release point when he throws a football feels like it's like a tenth of a second when he catches the ball, from a Jordan McLaughlin head manning the ball, pushing it ahead. Beasley catches it and shoots it all in one motion, barely sets his feet, but he does. He sets his feet and he gets the shot off, and now it's going in. We weren't seeing that confidence at all earlier this season. And now he's more than just a volume shooter if this is what he can do. Remember, this is a guy who scored basically 19.9 points per game on 40% three-point shooting in a Wolves uniform before the season. There's a reason he got paid. It just adds a whole new dynamic to this Timberwolves team. If he could just play, if he plays anywhere near this well for the rest of the season, then the Timberwolves offense is going to completely, well, it already has taken off. It's going to stay in the air and keep ascending. If Beasley can play like this. Okay. The second key takeaway, this one's a little bit more of a downer. We'll end on, I guess, a high note after this. Actually, yeah. Let's talk about this next. Point of attack defense. It was a little bit lazy in this game. Help defense was more than a little bit lazy. Actually, Malik Beasley, by the way, I think was pretty good defensively in this game. Occasionally, he was the low man, stepped up on the perimeter. He was okay. Grand scheme of things, Beasley was actually one of the Wolves' better defenders, which I'm not saying that as like a backhanded compliment because I mean, he actually was good, but most of the Timberwolves weren't on the perimeter. I thought Karl-Anthony Towns was pretty good defensively too. For the most part, the Wolves rebounding has been better of late. They were a plus 11 on the glass in this one, and they were a plus 3 or 4 against the Pistons Sunday. So the rebounding has improved a little, and it's really just kind of point of attack defense has been spotty. The help defense has been very poor. I just think it's been late reactions to contest shooters on the perimeter to help the helper. That hasn't been happening. The low man thing was a little bit better in this game, but stepping up and clogging the paint to cover for teammates hasn't been as good of late. So that's just something to pay attention to. I mean, look out. You face the Chicago Bulls on Friday. Like this, again, you could outscore the Kings by 20 on Wednesday playing the exact same way you did on Tuesday. It's probably not going to work against the Bulls on Friday night. Might not even work against the Pacers on Sunday. Who knows? I mean, that the Pacers, even a remade Pacers team is better than this Kings team. So once the Timberwolves start to see better teams again on their schedule, and they're going to, they cannot play defense the way that they have the last handful of games. I mean, they've now played 2 against the Pistons, 1 against the Kings. The defense wasn't good against the Nuggets going back to last Tuesday, but again, the offense has been so good. This is exactly what we thought this Wolves team would be early this season. And now that the offense has passed the defense is slowly sinking and is now like very middle of the pack in terms of league-wide defensive rating. And it needs to stay there. It can't keep sinking into the bottom 10, or we're going to see this thing kind of, swing back the other way, and the Wolves aren't going to be able to beat good teams if they can't at least put up a fight defensively. Now, the rebounding, the improvement on the glass is certainly encouraging, but again, the competition hasn't been great of late either. So something to keep in mind. My last point is again, kind of a two-parter. I'm cheating a little bit on these, but Jordan McLaughlin, have to talk about Jordan McLaughlin, and we will more in Studs and Duds. Spoiler there. Phenomenal. Really, really good. I mean, if he's like, this is the Jordan McLaughlin that the Timberwolves thought they were getting a steal with when they signed him to a second two-way deal last year. And then when they signed him again late this offseason, 11 and 11, a double-double, a perfect 5 of 5 shooting for Jordan McLaughlin, 0 turnovers. He pitched in 5 rebounds in 19 minutes. And he led just a bench unit that I can't say enough about this bench unit. It looked like we were going to be down to a 10-man rotation. Remember, Sunday, the Timberwolves tried to go with a 9-man rotation. Taurean Prince sprained his ankle early, an 11-man rotation, and sprained his ankle early, so we didn't really get to see how that was going to play out. This was a 10-man rotation until the Wolves opened the fourth quarter with Jalen Noel on the floor for the first time of the game. Now, this was a 12-point game at the time, but it wasn't garbage time. And I mean, Towns was on the floor with Jalen Noel, so that I don't think it was dictated by the score at all. I think that Chris Finch wanted to keep all 11 guys engaged, including Jalen Noel. So your six primary bench guys are Torian Prince, Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid, Jordan McLaughlin, Malik Beasley, and Jalen Noel. And Noel played well he played the entire fourth quarter, just the 12 minutes he played in this game, 6 points, 3 rebounds, 2 of 5 shooting. He made his only 3-point attempt. So really interested to see if Finch is really able to keep up this 12-man rotation or 11-man rotation thing. Now, if front end of a back-to-back, so maybe that's part of it. And he tried to steal some minutes here and there in a double-digit game. So we'll see if he does it again Wednesday, but that's certainly something we'll have to monitor is the unconventional 11-man rotation. Is that really going to be a thing moving forward? But if McLaughlin plays like this, I mean, we're the exact opposite of where we were 3 weeks ago, where it was like, if Noel plays like this, how's McLaughlin ever going to play? Remember, he was bad early in the year, then he got hurt, then he had COVID, and it felt like this was Noel's backup point guard spot. And now all of a sudden it's like, well, how's Noel going to get on the court? Because McLaughlin's playing so well, and Prince is playing so well, and Beasley's playing out of this world. I've said it a million times before. The depth on this team is legitimately good, and it matters over the course of a long season like this. And we're now roughly 2/3 of the way through, and it's really, really showing itself for the Timberwolves how beneficial their depth has been. Okay, let's close the show by doing individual studs and duds. We're going to do that here next. First, though, let's talk about our friends over at Built Bar. This is the time of year that I've pretty much given up on all my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution, of course, because I actually enjoy eating Built Bars. Genuinely, I said this the other day. Just got 60 more Built Bars in the mail late last week. I have to reorder them before I run out of my previous shipment because I legitimately eat at least one of these every single day. Have you tried Built Bar Puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar, they are a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with some incredible flavors. Yummy, cinnamony, churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. They're all delicious. Those are going to be, all three of those flavors will be your new favorite. Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, including Puffs. That's 100% real chocolate. Low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bars with these. They are better. Remember, a typical candy bar could be anywhere from 200 to 300 calories. Go to built.com and scroll down to the macros chart. You'll be blown away. High protein, low cal, high fiber, low carb. Most Built Bars have just 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, and 4 net carbs, plus 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually has around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. Mint brownie, coconut almond, and new for this month in February, white chocolate cookies and cream. They're all delicious, and new flavors are coming out all the time. If they think a flavor might be good, they'll make it. It will be delicious, and it will be good for you. At Built Bar, they're all about the taste. They make it taste delicious first, and then they figure out how to make it healthy. I don't know how they do it, but they truly pull it off every single time. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, let's talk individual studs and duds from this one. Number one, Karl-Anthony Towns, talked a lot about him already. 25 points on 14 shots, 10 to 14 shooting, 2 of 3 outside the arc, continues to be ultra efficient. Remember, he had 0 free throw attempts on Sunday against Detroit. I complained about that a little bit on the post-game pod. He only had 3 in this game. I thought generally, actually, this was a pretty well officiated game. He probably could have had another trip or two to the line, but 25 on 14 shots is great. 9 rebounds, 3 assists for Cat, 3 turnovers in 28 minutes. And he did commit 4 fouls. I think 3 were actually before halftime. So hopefully that doesn't come up again. He's been doing so well lately of avoiding getting into foul trouble over the past few games. So fantastic for Towns. He continues to pace this team, be the best player on the floor most nights. And he was great. Secondly, for me in this game, Malik Beasley, already talked about him quite a bit too. 21 points, 7 of 8 shooting outside the arc. Missed his only three 2-point attempts in this game. He missed a couple layups. Had just 2 rebounds and a steal, but only 1 turnover in 19 minutes. Very good game for Malik once again. My third stud for this one has to be Jordan McLaughlin. A double-double off the bench in just 19 minutes. 11 points, 11 assists, 5 rebounds. A perfect 5 of 5 shooting. Made his only 3-point attempt. A wide open shot in the right corner as the Wolves tried to pull away. That was kind of during the crazy Malik Beasley stretch. What was it? I guess it was the early third quarter when he kind of got hot. And McLaughlin only played 19 minutes, but he had 11 assists and 0 turnovers. He pitched in a steal and a block in those 5 rebounds, and it was just really good. I mean, McLaughlin, the way he runs the offense is in some ways similar to D'Angelo Russell, but he's a little better in tight spaces than D'Lo, and he's not quite as dynamic passing the ball, but he's so good in the pick and roll. He has such a good rapport with Naz Reid, and also pushing the ball up the floor. He can turn defense into offense faster than D'Lo can. He's so good at getting the ball in Beasley's hands and McDaniel's hands running on the wing and pick and roll to Naz Reid. Just a really well-rounded point guard is Jordan McLaughlin. And the Wolves are very lucky to have him as effectively their third string point guard. But now that Beverly's a starter, he's really kind of the backup point guard. It's those 3 guys kind of rotating through, and McLaughlin earned his 19 minutes in this game. Be really interesting to see what the minutes allocation looks like moving forward. I also want to shout out, I can't really give studs to these guys because, the rules. I pick 3 every game. But basically everybody played really well for the Wolves. I mean, Jared Vanderbilt had 9 and 11. Taurean Prince had 11 points, 4 steals in 19 minutes for Prince, and he made 3 more three-pointers in this game. And Naz Reid had a monster dunk, just an absolute poster. He jumped from the hash mark between the restricted area and the free throw line. Literally, he jumped from the half circle there, that the hash is, and dunked over Alex Len. It was an amazing dunk. And then McLaughlin stole the inbound and got a layup in like literally 1.5 seconds later. Naz, though, had 12 points, 4 rebounds, a steal, and an assist. 2 made threes for Naz Reid in this game. And after he had the little hyperextension, what they were calling a knee bruise in the game Sunday, I seemed unlikely he'd play in this game, but he looked no worse for the wear. He was fantastic in this game as well. In terms of duds, Anthony Edwards had another rough game. We had to go back, 3 games ago, he scored 5 points. He scored 5 points in this game on 12 shots, 2 of 12 shooting, 0 of 3 outside the arc, 1 of 2 on free throw attempts, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, and 2 turnovers in 26 minutes. He missed at least 4 layups in this game, if not more than that. Yes, he was fouled a couple of times, but he has to finish through minimal contact. I mean, like this is an Ant thing at this point. And his numbers at the rim, this is a topic for another show, and I could probably spend at least a segment talking about this. I actually did in the offseason, I think it was, or maybe it was very early this season. It might have been like October, November. His numbers finishing at the rim are not nearly as good as you might think, unless you watch every Timberwolves game. And then you know what I'm getting at. He should be a little better around the rim than he has been. And that comes with age as he continues to get stronger and he realizes that he's going to have to absorb contact and eventually he'll get a few more foul calls. And I guess maybe he has to get that magic all-star appearance before he starts getting a few of these calls, but he's got to finish through contact. And it's just not happening right now. And who knows, speculating a little, obviously he had the knee tweak a couple of weeks ago. That was a little bit scary. He scored 40 points the next time out and it was great the next 2 or 3 games. But since then, he's always got the knee packs on his knees on the bench. And it's just, I don't know. It just hasn't been vintage Ant the last few games. Although I did, the other day against the Pistons, he was so good passing the ball. And even in this game, the reason why the Wolves offense continues to click, even with Ant not being himself and shooting 2 of 12, is because teams are still loading up on him and trying to make life difficult. And he's making the right reads by and large. He's finding open teammates. He's getting hockey assists. I spent a while talking about that after the Pistons game the other day. So Ant is still generally playing well. It's just the shooting is not there. The efficiency is not there. By the way, he had not scored so he scored 5 points, exactly 5 points in 2 of the last 4 games. The last time he scored 5 or fewer points was mid-January. It was like January 12th or 21st or something last year, 2021. It was his 14th game as a professional. He was still coming off the bench playing against the Atlanta Hawks, and I think he scored 4 or 5 points in that game. Since then, he's never scored that few points. And this year, he hadn't scored less than 9 in a game until 3 games ago. I think it was the Denver game. He had 5. And now this game, he scored 5 again. So weird, certainly more of an anomaly at this point. Nothing to really, truly be concerned about. But, I mean, if he only scores 5 and a couple other of the Wolves' primary scorers have off nights, the Wolves aren't going to win. And they've been able to cover it because they're playing bad teams. And Towns and Beasley have been phenomenal lately. And D'Lo was okay in this game too. He wasn't quite as good as he has been of late. Wasn't as efficient. Didn't shoot the ball as well, but still had 14 and 7. All right. That's all I really have for this one. We'll do it again here in 24 hours, or I guess me recording this now after this game, a lot less than 24 hours from now, the Wolves will take on the Kings again Wednesday night. We'll do the post-game pod again. We'll talk about it afterwards. And leading into the trade deadline on Thursday, just real quickly here at the end of the show today, nothing significant Wolves related. Obviously, a couple of big trades league-wide today. The Kings-Pacers trade I talked about, and a couple of the CJ McCollum going to the New Orleans Pelicans. I still think it's unlikely that the Timberwolves make a trade, and I'm sorry to rain on anyone's parade. I just don't think the Timberwolves end up making a move. And maybe I'm wrong, but that's sitting here now. I think the most likely scenario still, as I talked about extensively on Tuesday, is maybe a pick for Josh Okogie, something like that. I don't think a major trade for Josh Richardson is necessarily likely. I don't think they're trying to trade Malik Beasley. I know there's Michael Scotto of Hoops Hype is talking about the Wolves wanting at least a first rounder back for Beasley. Yeah, I mean, like, sure, that makes sense to me. They wouldn't trade him for less than that, but why would they trade him unless they're getting, like, it doesn't make sense to trade Beasley for a pick when they're trying to win this year and Beasley has 1 year plus a team option on his contract. I just don't think he gets traded. So all that to say, I'm still of the opinion that a trade does not come to fruition for the Wolves. Obviously, if it does, we'll do an emergency podcast as soon as I can. We'll do a quick video for Locked On Now and get that up on Twitter. If anything were to happen on Wednesday or Thursday, and hopefully it could be part of the live show on Thursday afternoon, the Locked On NBA show on YouTube that I mentioned earlier. So stay tuned to Locked On Wolves and Locked On NBA for everything related to the trade deadline here in the next couple of days. And we'll definitely have it covered across the board. Which, again, that brings me to another thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen. Of course, we're available everywhere and free everywhere, including YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, and Odyssey. You can also follow on Twitter at Locked On T Wolves and at Beecken. And again, that's with 2 B's, 2 E's, CKEN. Thanks again for listening to Locked On Wolves, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. And as long as you're making Locked On Wolves your first listen, you can make your second listen Locked On Bets. It's your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. All right, we'll do this again Wednesday night following Wolves Kings Part 2 from the Golden One Center in Sacramento. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.